At its core, UNICEF has this one huge goal: to create real, measurable change for kids all over the world. But here's the billion-dollar question. Literally, how do you actually prove that you're making a difference? How do you know for sure that all that money and effort is creating lasting change? Well, that's exactly what UNICEF set out to answer, and what they came up with is pretty fascinating.
This quote right here really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. It's all about a massive shift in thinking, moving away from just hoping a program works to being able to say, we can prove this works. It's about accountability, right? Not just to donors, but to the actual children in this picture and millions more just like them.
And this really gets to the heart of it all. We are talking about absolutely vast resources, and even more importantly, the well-being of the world's most vulnerable kids. So, where do you even begin to answer a question that big? Well, for UNICEF, the first step was taking a really hard look at the data. To figure out where they were going, UNICEF first had to take this brutally honest look at where they'd been. And what they found? Well, they found a pretty shocking gap between how much they were investing and the hard proof they had of their impact. Okay, check out this number. Between 2018 and 2021, UNICEF poured over $23 billion into its programs. I mean, that is just a staggering amount of investment and effort, happening all across the globe in all their major focus areas. Now hold that huge number in your head, and look at this one. 36. That's it. In that exact same time frame, only 36 rigorous impact evaluations were actually produced. That's not a lot of proof for $23 billion of work. This huge disconnect is exactly what they mean when they talk about the evidence gap.
And what's really interesting is that when you start digging in, the problem isn't just how many evaluations there were, it's also where they were focused. I mean, you see this massive slice of the pie for social protection, and that often means things like cash transfers, which are, a bit more straightforward to track. But then look at these tiny little slivers for really critical areas like health, nutrition, and child protection. It means that in some of their most important work, they were flying with some pretty major blind spots.
So the big question is, why was this happening? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was this whole mix of complex challenges. Think about it. A lot of it was just bad timing. The decision to evaluate a program's impact would come way too late. Sometimes the basic logic of how a program was supposed to work, what they call a theory of change, was shaky from the start. And then, of course, you've got the usual suspects. Not enough good data, really high costs, and just not enough people on the ground who really knew how to run these complicated evaluations.
Okay, so to really understand the solution, we first need to get on the same page about what proving impact actually means. It sounds simple, but it's not. There's this absolutely crucial difference between proving you caused something to happen versus just proving you contributed to it.
So here's the official definition UNICEF works with. And the keywords you got to focus on are produced by an intervention, right? So let's say a UNICEF program provides clean water to a village, and a few months later, child health gets better. The whole challenge is figuring out, was that improvement truly caused by the clean water? Or would it have happened anyway because, I don't know, a new health clinic opened up down the road at the same time?
And this slide just breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you have attribution. This is like the gold standard of proof. It asks, did our program, and our program alone, cause this change? To prove that, you need something called a counterfactual. And the best analogy is like having an identical twin who didn't get the program so you can see the difference. But in the real world, that's almost impossible. So on the other side, you have contribution. This asks a slightly different question. Did our program help cause this change, probably along with a bunch of other factors? This is way more realistic for complex situations.
All right, so with a clear idea of the problem and what they were up against, UNICEF developed a brand new strategy to close that evidence gap for good. It's a really clear path forward, and it's built on 3 core pillars.
The whole strategy really boils down to these 3 things. First, just do more. Increase the number of evaluations and cover more ground. Second, get smarter about how they're done by using new and different methods. And third, and this one's huge, make sure the lessons from these evaluations actually get used to make programs better.
So that first pillar is all about ramping up coverage. And the centerpiece here is something they're calling an Impact Catalyst Fund. Basically, it's seed money. It provides matching grants to country offices to give them that little push they need to start more evaluations. They're also making a big effort to expand into those areas with blind spots, like adolescent mental health. And maybe most importantly, they're trying to figure out what works in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, which is, as you can imagine, incredibly difficult to measure. Pillar 2 is all about innovation. It's about working smarter, not just harder. They're setting up a methods innovation lab to test out new, cheaper, faster ways to measure impact. This means getting really creative with data that's already out there, things like government records or even satellite images that can show how a village has changed over time. And they're also creating a help desk, so teams on the ground have instant access to experts who can help them pick the best tools for the job.
And this right here, this might be the most crucial piece of the puzzle. Because generating all this amazing data is completely useless if it just sits in a report on a shelf somewhere. This third pillar is all about building a real culture of learning. It means training staff so they actually understand and use the evidence, creating simple guidebooks and actively sharing what works, and just as importantly, what doesn't work with the entire world.
And what's so smart about this whole thing is when you put it all together, you can see how this new strategy is perfectly designed to fix those exact problems we talked about earlier. The Catalyst Fund tackles the money problem, the Innovation Lab gets around data limits, and the focus on learning builds up the skills of the staff. It's not just a plan, it's a really comprehensive solution.
So we've gone through the problem, we've looked at the strategy, but let's zoom out for a second. Why does any of this internal stuff about evaluation frameworks and data methods really matter? Well, it matters because it's all about making every single dollar count for children.
And this quote just nails it. The power of having good evidence is really twofold. First, it gives you the hard proof you need to go to governments and partners and say, look, this works, let's make it bigger. But just as importantly, it gives you the confidence to say, you know what, this other thing isn't working, so let's stop spending money on it and try something else.
Ultimately, when you boil it all down, it's a pretty simple and powerful chain reaction. Better evidence leads to smarter decisions. Smarter decisions lead to more effective programs. And more effective programs mean a real, measurable, and profound impact on the lives of children all over the world. That's the endgame. So this new strategy is way more than just some internal document. It's a real commitment to being more accountable and more effective. And it leaves all of us with a really powerful and hopeful question to think about. If every single action we take and every single dollar we spend is guided by the best possible evidence, just imagine how much better we can make the future for every single child.